Sometimes I just. All right, one ready to go? All right, here we go. We're starting. Here we go. All right, the hour is to call this meeting to order. Call this joint meeting of the North Public Commissioners and the Sewer Authority for Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. We are conducting this meeting live and also on WebEx and by telephone. And I would ask all those who are joining by WebEx or telephone to mute your devices when you're not speaking, and when you do speak, to state your name for clarity of the record. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is a 15-minute public comment period. Is there any members of the public on who would like to speak? Anybody have any public? Nobody? All right, if anybody joins later, we can always reopen agenda item 2. All right, agenda item 3, approval of the minutes of the October 24th, 2023 meeting, which was provided in your board package. I assume I'll entertain a motion if everyone's had a chance to read through it. All right, thank you, Bill. Do I have a second? All right, I have a first and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. 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 All those opposed say nay. Ready is okay. We have 5, so that's unanimous. Very well, the minutes are approved. All right, agenda item 4 is the information and updates. Provided in your board package, we have 2. As usual, we have the financial update. We'll start with that. Are there any questions or comments on the financial updates? November, I didn't have any. No. I have nothing. If there's none, we'll move on to the leadership team template. Any questions or comments on the leadership?
I didn't have any, but I was wondering what's going on at the south end of the viaduct.
Oh, Larry, I want to give an update on that one, please.
Sorry, Larry.
Yeah, there's a existing piece of the River Avenue force main that has a hole. And of course, it's not in the road, it's on the other side of the parapet wall and DOT between their electric vault and stuff, so we're vacuum excavating to be able to get down. We finally have an excavator, we're gonna replace the pipe tomorrow, re-energize the force main, it's all about that.
So,
No, I wish it was, but no, unfortunately, it's not inside to the car.
but Larry had done the job, what, 3 years ago?
2018.
Oh, 5 years ago, of relighting all the way from the pump station to the viaduct. And that was leaking, and unfortunately, we found a leak, just a little task where they had replaced.
Brought the leak to your attention,
On the railroad, it was flooding their tracks in the train bridge.
So slowly but surely, we're getting some of these force mains fixed and replaced.
no, is it the, that one that's, it's a lot of activity there. I know it was electric. That's, the last couple of weeks.
West Town Street?
West Town Street, yeah, intersection with,
I think that's in here. I think they're doing work on the bridge and they have to put the, I think they're gonna put the lines underground.
Correct, yeah, so the state of Connecticut is redoing that bridge, so we have to take all of our wires and take them off the bridge and then put them on the ground.
because somebody left behind a tamper. Somebody, it's been sitting there for the last few days, but everybody's lost.
Well, we're not, I know that NP, we finished our portion of that, but the telecom still has some work to do, so maybe theirs, but all.
Yeah, it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
That's a piece of equipment.
That would be not in the law department, that'd be in Barry's department, and Barry's not here to hear it, but we'll make sure somebody rides by tomorrow, finds out if it's ours
Yeah.
or a telecom.
He's listening online.
Got it online? Yeah.
All right, I have one question for metering. And we haven't talked about the AMI in a while. So I was reading in the comments and it said that we have a 97% communication status because the meters are outside electric space. What is outside?
in Preston. Chicago.
You're close enough to.
So we are looking at how do we resolve that by maybe extending some of our collectors out
Right.
in areas.
Okay,
But that's conversation with each of the towns.
yeah, that's what it sounded like, okay. But it was working ever on its own. Never quite done with the project.
But, yeah, and when you look at our meter readers need to do drive-bys.
Yeah, right.
And it's not going out and actually have to read the meter on all the, handheld.
You can get close to it, huh?
There are a few meters that are still read, but very, very good. Handful.
Like an extension.
Cost effective and.
They replaced the photo sensor, you can work with Bosra and replace the photo sensor in the street light, and that actually acts as a collector. And then it's got to be wall, it's a reason I came out like that.
Okay, are there any additional questions on the leadership team template? Comments, all right. All right, moving along to information and updates. The first one is the CMIC update, that is myself. So. CMIC board met on October 26th and 11/16 since our last meeting. Projections for the energy prices have returned to normal with the return of natural gas prices to 2019 levels. For October, the Henry Hub gas price was $2.95, which is $2.46 lower than the budget. Member residual energy cost for October was budgeted at $51.45. The actuals came in at $43.13. Guarantees 47. Also, as the auction clearing price was $2 per kilowatt a month, which supports TMEC's decision to sell Pierce plant in Wallingford due to the falling capacity prices. The master dashboard hearing predictions has the member power cost with member return at $118 per megawatt hour versus the budget. So we get that pretty well. I think Sean's got a mute. Somebody has.
That's Mike.
Is that Mike? Michael, you gotta mute your device.
Yeah, that's Mike.
All right, thanks. All right, the project portfolio for October was well above budget at $620,000 versus the budget of $405,000. So a good month for the projects, and overall for the year-end project portfolio is standing at $6.19 million versus a budget of $4.76 million. So 6 is not our best year, but it's quite a bit more than what we expected. So that's good news. At the November meeting, which is our annual meeting, slate of officers was approved, including Crystal Rose as treasurer. The committee assignments were also approved with myself and Bob Staley in the audit committee, Crystal Rose and Bob Staley on the budget and finance committee, and also on the governance committee. Crystal Rose on the risk committee, and our own Chris Riley on the legislative and government affairs committee. The Norwich Municipal Representative David Eggleston serves on all committees. Also at the November meeting, the CMIC and Transco budgets were approved, and the CMIC decarbonization policy was approved. The decarbonization policy addresses the desire for CMIC to decarbonize as quickly as possible, while identifying the associated challenges, including the lack of ISO New England policy and regulation, to include renewables into the established energy market that relies on energy assets to be dispatched. Wind and solar power cannot be dispatched, obviously. As discussed at a previous meeting and in keeping with our decarbonization goals, CMIC acquired a significant amount of hydropower from Great River Hydro last year, which is included in the rate 9 prices. Other carbon-free sources utilized by CMIC are Hydro-Quebec, the Hydro-Quebec project, and the community solar garden. And perhaps going forward, CMIC will add some nuclear or perhaps offshore wind. And that's all I have. And along those lines, it was good to see that Ørsted decided to go ahead with the project. They were talking about backing out of everything. And I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but all of a sudden they decided to go forward with, I think, South Fork Wind, and I think Revolution Wind. And there's a third one. Right. And there's a third one that's going to be putting in as well. So that's good news for all those who like offshore wind. And every time there's a story in the paper about anything related to the State Pier project or any offshore wind, in the comments section, it's just nothing but negative comments about every conceivable aspect. And the port authority's corrupt, and Ørsted, Eversource is corrupt, and blah, blah, blah. And it's gonna cost a fortune and kill the whales and everything, and it's most of it is wrong. And so that'll be interesting. If you've seen, I came back from the CMAC meeting, had to go back to work. We held the annual meeting down in Madison. And as you come down 95 into New London, you can see these towers that rise up above the road by 300 feet. It's unbelievably impressive. Yeah, so
It is impressive.
yeah, the blades are 300 feet long as well. It was really something. Okay, that's all I had for that. And next up is the Economic Development Subcommittee, which is Mr. Staley.
That is me.
Mr. Staley.
And we met, what, a week ago roughly? A week ago Monday? Yes. A couple weeks. Yeah. And there were sort of three things on the agenda, two of which were just updates. We talked a little bit about, the ongoing discussions we've had with Preston, the Mohegan tribe about Preston Riverwalk. That's a long way from being decisive. It has big potential for us potentially. It could be not that big a deal and it could be not. So we don't really know at this point. A lot of it depends on what happens with the development, whether what the nature of it is going to be, whether it's going to be water parks or whether it's going hotels or other things. We have the water rights, the gas rights, and the sewerage rights to the site, and we'll presumably be providing that to them. The area that's in some dispute is whether we have the electric rights. We do, but so does Eversource. And so it's not a clear, black and white thing. We both have a legitimate case to argue that we have a right to provide power. We're currently providing power to the site for the cleanup. And, we're adjacent to it, obviously. So it was once one big site that included property at Norwich and property in Preston. So if we can end up getting the electric contract as well, that's going to be a very valuable thing. And I think that Chris and the team are talking to the Mohegans and to Preston about it is an important thing. We also talked a little bit about an update of what CMEC is doing in terms of batteries. CMEC has a plan that they're developing to do utility scale battery projects in basically the member utility areas. So, Norwich, Groton, Jewel City, Boston, and to parts of Norwalk. And we don't know exactly where that's going to end up. We don't know how it's going to be done. Federal legislation has changed so that it's possible for non-private entities to get tax benefits now as a result of such a project, where it used to have to be a case where you do a purchase power agreement and let a private developer do the work. I still think the private developer is the way to go, but excuse me. But whatever the case, that's something that will, I think, be coming up in the first half of this year.
Well, that's what we'll do the decision-making about, because the RFP is on the street.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay.
And responses will be due by the end of the year. And then they'll be reviewing the responses. And that's phase one of 2 RFPs. The first is to get the value propositions. The second is to do site-specific costs and construction.
Yeah, and we don't, I don't think we have a firm idea of where to go or what to do, but one possibility is to install a utility battery site where the jet engine was located, right here on the headquarters. But there are other options, so, I mean, we'll just see where that goes.
Absolutely.
How much capacity are they talking about? roughly?
Well, they're breaking up into 5 megawatt packages, and they don't want to have all the eggs in one basket.
Or each municipality gets 5 megawatts roughly?
Not necessarily, they could put 10 here, they could put, 10 in Groton. They can do more, but they don't want to do more than 5 megawatts at a site for reliability issues. And they also want to make sure every municipality has an opportunity. Doesn't mean they have to take it, but has the opportunity to have something there.
So they might, for example, do 5 megawatts here, and they might do 5 megawatts at some other site in Norwich for a total of 10. But they probably don't want to do 10 at one location. And of course, I think they're talking about, what would it supply, 4 hours power, something like that. So, I mean, it's not gonna be
Right, but 5, okay, so 5 megawatts times how much total? It's like 5, so 25 megawatts?
Well, they're gonna look at the value proposition, they'll do a pro forma, they'll decide what the best amount is, right?
Okay, okay. So what do they want to use the batteries for? Is it
This is
peak shaving?
peak shaving equivalent to a microjet.
Okay. All right,
And-
So it's basically a non-mechanical
Right.
microjet.
wouldn't have all the issues with the, well, you would have.
Well, it's a combustion engine.
They don't have a lot of, right, it's, yeah, right, so it would be cleaner if the grid's cleaner than a microgen, which it is, okay. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think we have a choice at this point, but the jet engine over here would generate at 15 megawatts, is that right?
So we probably wouldn't allow them to put 15 megawatts here because at anything over 10 is problematic at this site. It has been for quite some time since when our load started dropping. 20 years ago, different story here. So we'll probably do 10 here. And then if a significant load comes on, we may be able to put something in another spot. Or if the 34.5 goes on, it gives us the flexibility. And that project is just starting design this year.
And that's the jet, is the jet shut down now?
Yes.
So that's the DEP or somebody is having us do that because of clean air considerations.
Right.
The big thing that the committee talked about was the idea of adding a solar farm to the northern half, I guess you would say, maybe 2/3 of Hollyhock Island. Basically, it's part of the overall sewage treatment rebuilding process. We're going to cover up the old dump, which, it used to, I don't know what happened to it, but it used to be pretty nicely covered up when I was a reporter. And as I said at the economic development meeting, when I could see my feet, I used to run there. And there was a nice path and everything. It's a mess now. And I don't know why that occurred, but maybe it just wasn't cared for. I don't know. But in any case, we're going to cover it up again. It's 4.3 acres roughly. It should be able to provide enough solar units for maybe 250, 300 houses. In terms of total power. So I think that's going to be a really good project. It's moving along. It's been submitted to CMAQ for consideration. And hopefully CMAQ's going to be interested in it. And it should be good for the city too, because, we own the land, and if it's done privately, we get tax revenue from it and so forth and so on. So, and that's something that we endorsed. I don't think we did a formal vote, but it was just Bill and me at the committee. There's only 3 members. We both were very supportive of it. So I think that that's something the Economic Development Committee supported. And quite frankly, I think it might make sense under other business for us to endorse it as a commission tonight.
Do they want to do that as a project with a PPA, or they want to only ask the?
I don't think we know at this point.
You do either way. It's gonna be at least 3 years before we're able to adequately cap that. And it could be 4 or 5, depending on how things go and how they sequence but it's gonna be 3 years out. So in 2 years, it's time to do a detailed design and do a pro forma on what the cost is and what the benefit is. So, but I think, the board, it would be good for the board to endorse this and say, this is something we want to move forward with and work with CMEC to, create a project, when appropriately to, in an appropriate timeframe to make this, happen.
And, you know, I think it's important to, particularly, I mean, Stu, you're on, and Chris, you're on the CMEC board, and we hear all the time about how the performance at the solar gardens is disappointing. You gotta remember a couple of things. First of all, those solar gardens probably have, what, 2015, 2016 equipment? We're talking about 2025, 26, 27 equipment going into this prospective development. It's gonna be better. From everything I understand, it's not night and day better than it was, but it's certainly better. But beyond that, the agreements that were negotiated, maybe because of a little conflict, but no need to make a big deal out of that. For the existing solar gardens that CMEC did, were not good. They didn't have minimum performance requirements of any size, and some of the other provisions were not perfect, and that's not going to be the case with this one. I mean, it's going to be done at arm's length, and it's going to be a good economic deal for ratepayers, and for CMEC, and for us.
When they put the first agreement in place, they didn't have performance guarantees because they assumed they'd be doing maintenance and trying to get as much performance out of these units as possible. Now, they've been sold from one party to another, ultimately with Tesla now. And, it's maybe not as important of an asset as it was when it was built. And they haven't had the trimming and cleaning and just, necessary maintenance that go with these things. It's not a high maintenance operation, but you do need to keep them up.
We're getting very close to some givebacks on the contractor side as well from Tesla.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll be slightly better of a loss.
Yeah.
But it's a big loss on the projects right now. But like you say, that doesn't mean that if there's any one good thing that came out of that project is you learn not how to do solar projects.
But when you say less of a loss, there's a social piece to that. There's a decarbonization green piece to that. So if it's a higher cost of power, it's reliable and it's green, it's still good to have in the portfolio.
Well, and I don't want to talk about bad things in the past, but I mean, the reality is there was a former CMEC board member who was also a consultant to the developer of the solar farms. So that's not.
Yeah, not the way to do it. Right, exactly. All right, well, thank you, Robert.
Yep.
And we'll move along to the Smart Energy Provider Award. Chris, who would you like to present this award?
So Smart Energy Provider is an APPA award, and we have received this year. Just went to the conference. I didn't go, but many of us here went. And this is really an efficiency sustainability award. And our efficiency team is really the people who engage in the sustainable and green projects. That's Katie Morris and Mary Lou Richling. And Mary Lou, would you like to let everybody know exactly what this award means to us and how we got it?
Sure. So Norwich Public Utilities was one of 66 public energy providers in the United States. We recognize this award by American Public Power for demonstrating commitment to efficiency and energy efficiency, distributed energy resources, and environmental initiatives. We are very proud to be recognized by APPA with this important award. It reflects a great deal of time, effort, and commitment by a number of employees, months after month, year after year. We are committed to bringing good stewardship of the environmental, for our community today and for years to come. Katie and I, helped to support this initiative through Smart Energy Provider designation provides national recognition of utility efforts to incorporate efficiencies and sustainability while providing affordable electric service. The program also helps utilities benchmark and elevate their work on these topics against a set of industry best practices. Program also helps the Smart Energy Provider recognition, which lasts around 3 years, lasts for 3 years, which we also won the award 2 years from 2 consecutive 3 years, 6 years ago.
Third time.
Third time. And it has 4 areas that are evaluated. Smart energy information, which looks at how utilities have structured its overall program, including the establishment of clear goals and objectives. Energy efficiency and distributed energy resources, or DERS, which looked at various methods of energy efficiency and DERS, as well as how these programs are marketed. Environmental sustainability programs and initiatives, which evaluates how the utility reduces emissions and other adverse impacts to the environment. And lastly, communications, education, and customer experience, which I think many of you have seen, which looks at the utilities policy, programs, and procedures and how they're shared with the customers. So I'd like to
Katie and Devin, you must have a part of this as well, right?
Yeah, it is a part, it is company as well, yes.
All right.
Yeah, and many other people, it's just not Katie and I, Katie does the administration and I do a lot of the oversight, but it's everybody in this company that helped with this.
Yeah.
It's not just us, we just head up the program.
I got you. Well, thank you. That's excellent.
So electric vehicle, you call in the office, you're getting Katie or Mary Lou. A chip program with a combined heat, that's our team. If you need efficiency, upgrades in your business, that's our team. All this contributed. And the programs, are something that are very positive, and we'll be talking about those in the next year.
Right, solar's a big piece, Lantern Energy, which does your residential audits for our customers. So lighting, we do a lot of VFDs, yeah, as we said, on the heating side, but we do evaluations of both residential and commercial.
Excellent. Well, my electric vehicle is still functioning and my geothermal is doing great. So it's working out.
Great.
Very good.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you. All right, moving on to the winter gas supply. Chris will provide this important update.
Right. Brent Terry will be leading the presentation here. And I think this is going to be a good news story again on, where we are. We talked about a lot of this during our rates, and this is really what we're going to be looking at for this next year. And you'll see all the work that goes into it. And once again, we have a positive story to tell.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just want to take a few minutes, go over kind of what we're looking at for forecast on the gas side, load, weather, things of that nature. You can go ahead and next slide, Smo. We're going to review, our natural gas supply contracts. We review these a lot. We'll touch base on it real quick. I also want to take a little bit of time, look at some historical weather, load, gas costs. Then we'll move on to looking at this winter, what our forecast looks like for the winter of 23-24. And when we say winter, November to March months. And then lastly, we're going to review the wholesale natural gas market dynamics, overall domestically, but also from a regional perspective as well. Next slide. So with the pipeline supply contracts that we have, we are subscribed to several interstate pipelines. On the upstream side, we have Millennium Pipeline Company, which delivers about 6,000 decatherms a day winter capacity into Algonquin. And then we're also Texas Eastern, another 6,900 decatherms a day of delivered capacity into Algonquin. Texas Eastern is an Enbridge company. Then on the downstream side, which delivers down to our city gates, is Algonquin, where we have just shy of 12,900 decatherms a day of winter capacity. To give you an idea as far as how much that is, that's about 125,000 CCFs a day of deliverable capacity to our customers from the pipelines. In addition, we do have, our underground storage assets. We have about 123,000 decatherms of storage on Texas Eastern. This is released to our asset manager, and also has deliverability into Texas Eastern. And then lastly, we have another storage contract with Eastern Gas Transmission and Storage, a Berkshire Hathaway company, about 88,000 decatherms. We manage this as winter base load. So we started releasing this storage into the system November 1st, and that will continue all the way through the end of March. Next slide, please. So in addition, we do have some other supplies and other resources or assets to us. We do have the liquefied natural gas plant or the LNG plant up in the industrial park. We own and operate this plant, it has capability to vaporize over 2,000 decatherms a day, about 4,500 decatherms of storage capacity. We do have contracted supplies to get shipments in via truck from Red LNG, a company out of Pennsylvania. Then also we're working on getting a contract together with Energier, a company from Montreal. This facility is behind the city gate meter, meaning that it will reduce our pipeline capacity. We operate it economically to try to avoid the pricing spikes that can happen on a daily basis, as well as to meet some peaks in demand on those really cold days. The last aspect of our contracts is, our asset manager. So NRG Business Marketing, which was formerly Direct Energy, has been our asset manager since November of 2016, and we are currently contracted through October of 25. MPU, we've released all of our pipeline and storage assets to NRG. They optimize the use of these contracts in exchange for firm delivery of all of our gas needs 24/7, 365. In return, MPU gets a negotiated asset management credit payment every single month. Next slide, please. So just looking at, the last 5 years of, historical gas winter information, some of the key takeaways we want to keep in mind is that weather conditions impact our loads, market conditions impact our costs, and the AMA credit helps subsidize our costs. On a regional basis, weather will impact market will then impact costs, right? Just some of the key takeaways. I know this is a little bit of information to sort of look at. But some of the important things are that the winters have been relatively mild, warmer than normal, really over the last 10-year stretch. But very so considerably since 2018 and 2019. Even last year, we had an extremely warm winter. You can see how the loads in the HDDs is heating degree days, the lower it is, the warmer it is. You'll see that as the heating degree days are lower, our load subsequently is lower as well. Another important key takeaway is the decatherms per heating degree day. Notice ever since COVID, we've been hovering around, the very low 200s. That's most likely very indicative of still recovering from the pandemic. We haven't seen full restoration of what our load was prior to the pandemic. There are still some customers out there still looking to get back to full capacity and efficiencies too. And I think some of this could be, we haven't had much of this, but maybe in the future, if there is more electric switching, from natural gas to electrification, we could continue to see that go down. But regardless of all of that, you'll still notice that we had a significant peak day last winter.
It's just a quick question.
Sure.
New England and Norwich and Connecticut are sort of isolated, and we depend on pipelines that go through New Jersey and New York and so forth, and they become very restrictive in terms of no new gas lines and all of that sort of stuff. What is the impact of that?
The impact is elevated prices in New England. So we will, I will touch on some nuances, but basically what you're going to see is a very, very constrained region, and that is New England. I'll talk about this in a minute, but most of the LDCs in New England are still realizing growth of 1 to 1.5% on an annual basis in their load. And there's no new capacity coming online. The pipelines operate at, near, or even above full capacity nearly 365 days a year.
And, I don't know what Connecticut, if they had the opportunity to do so, whether they would restrict it or encourage it or any of those sorts of things. But the reality is, other political entities are blocking additional gas delivery to Connecticut. And I don't think we have any way to deal with that.
That's a major issue. Well, we'll touch on it a little bit. I think we got very lucky in that the state was quite pro-gas not so long ago. Led a lot of the LDCs, including ourselves, to subscribe to some of those expansion projects that came online when they were available. For all we know, those could be the last that ever came through the area.
A lot of places in Europe have now just defined gas as a green energy.
Interesting. Marisol, when you look at residential customer switching, we're gaining considerably more than we're losing. A few switch, but most of our conversions to electric are all oil customers.
Yeah.
That's the great value. And then gas continues to grow and we have energy programs for that.
As we were saying, just the, even though it was very, very warm last year, we had a top 10 day in there. So we're still hitting peaks and we continue to hit peaks. I've broken out the cost by pipeline, which is commodity and reservation charges in pipeline, storage gas, LNG, and the AMA credit. And not a ton of fluctuation during the winter periods. Obviously, there were some, elevations in 21 and 22, as we talked about the supply chain issues and domestic low storage, global low storage levels and things of that nature. But one of the last key takeaways I think that's very important on the slide is our total unit cost down at the bottom in bold compared to the Algonquin daily average. And you can see how it is a significant discount to the Algonquin City Gate pricing. Meaning if we didn't have this capacity, we'd be paying 50% more over the last 5 years just for the gas. So it's, that capacity is very worthwhile for us to keep costs as low and stable as possible. Next slide. So this is just graphically just showing our record top 40 days. All the purple is prior to, fiscal year 2019. But the important takeaways here are everything in orange. Last year, very unseasonably warm. However, you still had 3 top 40 days. We continue to see, even if we have low that isn't where it was, or we have warm winters, there are still going to be days where we're hitting peaks, record days, and we don't see that ever really go away. Next slide.
Sorry, go back. And show the black line there.
My apologies. Yeah.
The
black lines are representative. The dotted line was our legacy capacity. This was before the Algonquin expansions of AIM Atlantic Bridge came online. That's how much capacity we used to have to be delivered to Norwich. With the subscription to AIM Atlantic Bridge, the solid black line is now what we have available. So we have sufficient capacity at the moment to meet peak days. As you can see, it gets very tight.
If we didn't buy that capacity, that dotted line would show how much volatility we would have in our gas prices over the winter.
And we'd be buying that.
Good planning has got us in a good place to be right now.
And if we have a lot of demand, we end up having to tap liquid gas, and that's expensive, from what I'm saying.
But relatively cheap to what you'd buy it on a peak day off of Belmar.
Yeah, because the inventory in the LNG tank has been hovering probably around $15, $17, a decatherm. Algonquin City Gate can hit $100, and that's not unheard of. In peak weather conditions, it's very common for it to get above $20, $30.
So the liquid is less susceptible to market variations because it's, at least in our case, we're not using it every day.
The liquid can reach those costs, but when we're injecting into our tank, when we're buying it, it's typically not a peak day. We're burning it on the peak day.
Yeah.
So we're sort of buying it at a lower price and selling it into the market.
Yeah. Okay.
Next slide. All right, so what does this 23-24 outlook, look like? Same sort of information, weather, load, costs, right, and unit costs. Our assumptions, we assume that the weather is going to be normal. I'm sure we all know how weather forecasts go, so we assume normal. We updated all of the market conditions, market outlook as of the end of October. And it's important to note that at least, we have executed a new AMA or an extension of our AMA with NRG. That contract started November 1st of this year. It's returning the highest value on record that we have from an asset management agreement at $7.5 million a year. A quick note, when you look at AMA credits, it's 3.1 million. Just keep in mind, this is just the winter period. That's just 5 months of that $7.5 million. So a normal winter means it's roughly could be 15% colder than it was last year, maybe 5% above the last 5-year average. We expect a relatively similar increase to our load. They trend very tightly together. We're still projecting, the potential to hit those peaks, right? Our peak design day is sitting at around 12,800 decatherms. So if it averages 0 degrees, that's what our expected load is, which it could be, even a little bit higher. That's a really good estimate. And when you start looking at the cost, you can notice how stable our pipeline gas cost is compared to last winter and even the last 5 winters on average. Very stable. Storage is significantly less expensive just because of the pricing of gas this summer. It was a very good summer for injecting gas. LNG, not very material, kind of ebbs and flows very comparable last year. And like I said, the AMA credit is really going to be the largest piece of the impact. It grew by 150% compared to last year. So in total, we're expecting, winter costs of total all in of $1.9 billion. I don't know the last time we've had gas costs in the winter be that low, but we've spent that much money in a month before, right? So it is very significant. And then lastly, it's that same sort of comparison looking at our all-in cost. You can see we're at a discount to Henry Hub by over $1 is what we're projecting. So a significant benefit to the capacity. The capacity has a lot of value that's being returned from the asset manager. But one of the interesting things to point out is the Algonquin pricing. All the gas markets compared to last year or 5-year average, they're comparable or they're down from last year. Algonquin's up 35% from last year as well. It's up 50% compared to the 5-year average. So we'll talk about some of those things we just talked about. The nuances of New England, we'll talk about that in a little bit. The Algonquin market is just this whole different sort of animal. And just give you an idea as far as customers that pay Algonquin City Gate pricing, if you don't have capacity on Algonquin, you are going to most likely be paying Algonquin City Gate for your gas supplies. That's mostly power gens, right, or large industrial customers. Okay.
Brendan.
Yes.
The NPU unit cost, that's total cost divided by the decatherms?
Yes, that's right.
So compared to last year, we're going to be about more than half of what we were.
That's correct.
Wow.
I mean, that's the AMA and commodity price.
Yeah. I mean, the bulk AMA, right? It's just such a huge impact. Such a huge.
Good. All right. Thanks.
So, very good story. Next slide, please. This is just, the NOAA weather forecast. On the left, we have November, December, January. On the right, January, February, March. The temperature is predicted to be probably above normal in New England, but overall relatively close is their prediction. They're forecasting some El Nino weather pattern for throughout the winter. What that's going to mean is just a warmer, drier north, versus a cold and wetter south. So that's the forecast. We'll see what comes with that once we get through winter. Next slide. So moving on to market conditions. We are seeing record high natural gas production domestically. On top of oil production being at record highs, natural gas, the byproduct of oil production, there is just a lot of supply out there. Because of that, domestic storage recovered over the last year, and now we're turning about 5% above the average. This roughly just means that supply is just a little bit bigger than demand right now. Right, there's a lot more supply out there. We're looking at that market tightening up in the future. By 2028, North American LNG export capacity is expected to double. It's now roughly 15 BCF a day. Its projections are out there from 25 to 30 BCF a day in 2038. And those are projects under construction. So that's really going to tighten the market in 5 years. One would think. We'll see kind of what happens. Not only that, but the natural gas power generation sector is anticipated to continue to grow domestically by 1 and 1.5% over last year. And just to give you an idea as far as history, the share of U.S. natural gas power burn has doubled in the last 15 years. 15 years ago, natural gas's share of electric generation was only 20%. Now it's 40%. Because it really does remain the most economic fuel for power gen. Conversely, right, if you look at coal in that same time period has shrunk from 50% of the portfolio down to 20. And renewables have grown from 2 to 15%. Now that's overall in the US. We'll look at New England in a second. That's overall US. And pricing overall is just very comparable to the 5-year average currently in the natural gas market. Next slide. This is just a graphical depiction of just what we talked about the power mix domestically, going back to 2003. The yellow is natural gas. You just see that strong growth seen over the last 20 years. The gray is coal, right? Basically, natural gas displays coal. Nuclear has been very stable over time. Hydro has been very stable. Nuclear is in orange, hydro is in blue. And then green up top is renewables, right? That they've seen significant growth. But if you look overall, the power demand has been relatively stable for the majority of these 20 years. When you start getting to the last maybe 5, you're starting to see a little bit of growth in the electric sector. Electrification, right, is really big. So,
I'm sorry.
Sure.
In a way that is, if you look back in 1950, it falls almost a straight line until it gets to 2000 and then it plateaus.
Interesting.
Is that just from energy conservation or? And it started to kick up now a little bit, but it was flat for 20 years. But for 50 years, it was going in a straight line.
I mean, I think speaking for us, the last 15 years, we've seen significant, not just plateau, right? But, we've seen some degradation in the load, right? And a lot of that is, we would assume, is due to efficiencies.
Energy efficiency.
Yeah, well, 50 years ago, we're talking CFLs, right? The Curleys.
Yeah.
And that was the start, and we were pushing that heavy. And then they transitioned to LED, and now go try to find a regular light bulb. It's, people, will use those for like a chicken coop, where they want to use it for heat, right? They're not using it for
Certification stuff, she has.
He still has them?
Well, she was advocating that we keep them, yeah. You remember that?
Yeah, but, if you go to, Home Depot to buy a light, like, to replace that, you're getting LEDs, you're not even getting anything in between.
But electricity generation is kind of flattened out, but I would imagine the number of businesses using electricity is probably going up. It's just that everyone's a little bit more efficient now with all their products and LED lighting, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's not as if we've stopped, or the economy is flatlined for 20 years. I would imagine.
Well, back in 2008, things went down, and it took a long time to catch up. You weren't building new houses, people weren't growing businesses back then. It was a tough time. The automobile companies need to be bailed out. It took a while to recover from that, to get there.
The source of this information too is from the EIA, right, which is relying on the end users, us, right, reporting your annual sort of information or power generators, how well some things like distributed generation, customers, solar generation, how well that gets into the reporting. I'm not too sure of. We report on ours, how much energy we receive from our customers to EIA. Can't speak for folks at net meter and things like that. It's not always as transparent in some utilities.
So as long as we're talking about different energy sources, I've got kind of an unrelated question, but it's a mystery to me. When we talk about the cost of a gas power plant, let's say, that's a reliable source of power. I mean, that runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, unless there's some unrelated problem. When we look at the cost of solar energy or wind power energy, does that cost include the cost of having batteries or having fossil fuel backup power available? Because they're unreliable, they're inherently unreliable. I mean, the wind stops blowing, the sun doesn't shine. And so I guess the question is, are we comparing apples to oranges or apples to apples?
In regards to this case?
Well, I mean, in
I
regards,
understand it's unrelated, but I wasn't sure if it's waiting back to.
So the answer is no, right? So a couple things with gas power plants that Brett already alluded to is that at the end of the day, power plants don't buy capacity on the pipeline like we do. So they are very affected by the momentary price on the market. So when Brendan says, gas hits $100, power plants are paying $100.
If they can get.
If they keep it, that's a great point, Chris. Where solar and your, solar, wind and things like that, they're all-in price are very expensive, but they are not subjected to those gas fluctuations that gas power plants are. But all that backup that they're required, because they are not, reliable as a gas power plant, is not priced into their market share.
Okay.
That becomes, and this is a lot of what they're talking about, where ISO New England hasn't figured this problem out yet, because the market isn't accounting for that.
Yeah.
So
The market will handle the battery, the market will handle our generator, it won't handle solar and wind.
exactly. So that's something that ISO New England right now is having a lot of conversation about. How do they design a market that will cover the cost that you just alluded to?
So if you're looking at an option to get some solar power, let's say, and you're told, well, it's gonna be X number of dollars per megawatt or whatever. That does not include cost of having to build or restore and maintain, say, a gas power plant. By backup.
If it's being done by a different provider, then no.
Yeah.
The whole industry is talking a lot about this right now. When you think about those assets, just the transmission infrastructure, the batteries. When you hear, Ørsted closed so much a megawatt for the wind, that's generating the energy.
Yes,
But then we've got to figure out how to redistribute the energy. This is the whole country, the whole world's dealing with this. And what kind of storage we need for it to be reliable, whether it be a gas turbine, whether it be a battery, whether it be a combination of all.
Yep.
And then who's gonna bear it? So I think the honest answer to 200,000 feet is costs going up globally.
Yeah.
And it's just a question of how much and who bears that. We're trying to work that out.
okay,
Thanks. It's gonna take a long time. All right, we sidetracked, Brett, I'm sorry.
No, it's all questions interesting. Getting down to the regional aspect, Eric, I think, to be honest, you kind of teed this up pretty well too. But New England really does continue to be a difficult area to attract affordable natural gas, mainly due to transportation constraints. As we discussed, regional pipelines, Algonquin, operate near, at, or above capacity all the time throughout the year. And the LDCs are still realizing growth in New England, so that signal to the customers hasn't gotten there yet. Customers are still saying that they want gas. And a lot of these LDCs rely on peaking supplies or peaking services in order to meet their winter needs. Some of them are up to 30% of their design day is met through peaking supplies, right? Things like our LNG plant, right? It's what we consider a peaking supply. FERC has recently held 2 forums in order to address natural gas and electric winter reliability, specifically here in New England. New England has a lot higher of a concentration of natural gas fired generation than domestically. About 55% of the New England energy portfolio is natural gas fired generation versus the 40% that we saw before domestically. And as you said, these generators, they don't hold firm capacity. So when the market hits $100 in Algonquin and it's available, that's what they're paying in order to generate electricity.
Oh, yeah.
So, no, you're good.
I muted, my apologies.
Mike, you're back live. Maybe. There we go. Not unmuting? Did you just click on the microphone and not do anything? She muted him.
I did.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's.
He would have
So, Mike, you try unmuting on your machine.
I'm gonna message IT. Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay. Maybe we'll check the pause, wait, continue. And piggybacking on these electric and gas forums, Algonquin responded with a capacity expansion.
Hey, Mike, I got you on my cell phone. On my cell phone, yes. And we're gonna have, just take a quick try to unmute you. Is it done?
He actually left the meeting.
Okay, we'll leave you on the phone then, Mike. Okay, but if you can get back on the meeting, it'd be great, if you want to see the rest of the presentation, otherwise you're just gonna have to listen. But we're almost at the end, and that'll be the only thing that has a presentation on it. Right? Okay.
So the Algonquin Pipeline responded to this forum and responded to the New England Gas customer base with a proposed capacity expansion vote. Scalable up to half a BCF a day. It's called Project Maple. However, it does have currently a very high indicative price. And there could be some regulatory environmental challenges. There is some construction that would have to be done in New York, right, which is difficult to say the least, the bulk of which would happen in Connecticut if we were to move forward, but there still is a decent enough piece in New York for them to get through. But however, MPU, we are in position to participate in the project if it does move forward and costs are reasonable.
Yeah, so we signed the letter of intent to move forward. When we get the final prices, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and decision.
So,
Oh, and the other thing, it does give us an opportunity to potentially upgrade some of our older stations, our legacy stations that need to get upgraded with or without this project. And if that's the case, there could be some value in our infrastructure side as well as more capacity.
So all of these challenges and conditions that's reflected in that Algonquin pricing forecast that you saw, where most other gas is trending down, but Algonquin is trending up, it's due to a lot of these factors, right? And like we said, costs are looking to be 35% higher than last year on Algonquin and 55% higher than the 5-year average. Next slide. And this is just a graphical depiction of the New England power mix. Once again, the yellow is natural gas. See, that's about 55%, very heavily reliant on natural gas in New England. There is virtually no coal, versus 20% of the US average. And the other key takeaway would be renewables, right? Renewables only make up 4% of the New England power portfolio compared to about 15%. I mean, I think we all know how difficult it is to operate renewables in New England, whether it be wind, solar, mostly, right?
How do you differentiate between renewables and non-carbon things like hydro?
Hydro's up there in blue.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not considered renewable in that chart. It's considered.
No.
Okay.
No.
And when you look at our low impact hydro institute accreditation, that is really a green source because of the way we're running it. All dams are not run this way, and that's why they differentiate. And that's part of our licensing that kind of requires us to get there, and then we went for the additional accrediting. If we were getting licensed, and they're usually 35, 40-year licenses, if we were not up for licensing for a long time, we may be able to run the river down to nothing, bring it back up. The way we run it now, I think it's about 6 inches about how much impact of the river we can do. That's why we are green. But prior to 95, different animal, and we used to draw down as much as we could get power out of the turbines.
So as far as expenses go, just kind of in summary, we touched on a lot of these points. Pipeline gas projected to be very stable compared to the 5-year average. A slight decrease, right, from winter of 22 and 23. Storage gas significantly less than 22 and 23 in the 5-year average due to less expensive summer injections. We have the high AMA credit, which is through October of 2025 at 7.5 million a year. Once again, highest on record that we have. And overall, $1.9 million of purchase gas expense is projected for the winter. 55% decrease to last year. Okay. Next slide. I was just getting into some of the nuances of the asset management. This feedbacks a lot on the regional aspects of the market. But all these unique challenges of gas plant in New England contributes directly to our asset management value, right? If it's difficult to get gas and difficult to get capacity, if there is capacity to be remarketed, which ours has some of that potential, it is very valuable. Capacity is extremely limited. We don't know if a significant expansion will happen again. Like we said, Project Maple is in its infancy. We'll see if it does come to fruition. Even if it does, I think the timetable is out to about 2030 for an in-service date. So MPU, we capitalized on these unique dynamics in an October 22 RFP, which returned this AMA credit. While market conditions have cooled off significantly since October of 22, it's important to know that we locked in this value, $7.5 million a year for those 2 years. The asset management credit, just like the gas market itself, can be extremely volatile. We've seen payments of $1.5 million a year up to $7.5 million a year. But what's important to know is anytime that we're forecasting purchased gas expenses, we do have models that are able to recalculate our AMA credits in future periods. So if you're looking at the PGA forecast, it's taken into consideration that the asset management credit is going to change. Looking forward, we would anticipate in future years our asset management credit to be around $4.5 million, $4 million a year, a significant decrease from what it is now. However, that still would be among the highest values we've ever received for our capacity. So still valuable. And next slide. So just in summary, we do have a very diverse portfolio of natural gas supply assets, and we utilize them to keep costs as stable as possible. And the management of these assets is extremely valuable and legal for the pipelines. Most winters in the last decade have been mostly warmer than usual, with maybe one exception or two. We continue to realize peak days, even in the warmest of winters, and all of which have been successfully managed, and we would anticipate that would continue, that we would successfully manage any of our peak days. Looking forward to this upcoming winter, expecting normal, potentially slightly above normal temps, but we're projecting the lowest purchased gas expense in recent memory. So all good news.
Okay, from a capacity perspective, we hear about the laundry might double its size every once in a while, and then it might go away the next day, but they're a big gas user. Freeport McMoRan or some replacement came back, they're a big gas user. We've talked about a potential area facility that we're trying to get some gas purchase at. What kind of capacity do we have? I mean, are we tapped out? Do we have the capacity to grow?
Well, Bob, that line is the black line up top. That's our capacity. These are peak days.
Those are our top 40 days on record.
Okay.
And it's not a bad thing to go above that peak if we have a customer 365 days of the year and we have to buy some peaking gas on those worst days.
Okay.
So it's not like you want to be in a position where where the dotted line was before, where we're always operating on those peak days double what we need. But we have a lot of room to grow here.
Okay, I saw the chart and I knew about the black line. I just don't know how to put that into real terms. And, what is the terms to be able to add customers, including big customers or not? I know there's a gap there, but.
We can't add a power plant, but we can add big customers.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Many big customers.
something that this graph doesn't show, now this is just pipeline capacity. Remember, we have, on the coldest days, 1,000 to 2,000 decatherms additionally can come out of the LNG plant. And then our gas contracts allow us another 2,000 decatherms a day of overrun capacity, basically, right, on the pipeline before we get into penalty gas situation. Basically, it means not only do you have to buy the commodity, but then they hit you with a 3 times the daily price for a penalty. So we do everything to stay out of that penalty, but there is still additional flexibility from the pipeline too.
Yeah. Back when we were in the dotted line area, we used to have interruptible customers, and there's an interruptible rate. We were trying to find ways of getting customers on that we could shut down on these peak days. We don't have that problem anymore. And if we had somebody really large, that's also an option to go back into that if it's something they can shut down their business for. But right now, a lot of room to grow.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Thank you. All right, that brings us to agenda item 6, which is executive session. Christie, would you like to
All right, I'm gonna start, right to left. Michelle, you get to stay. Larry, please stay. Good night, Laura. Attorney Patricia Boyd Williams will be leading us off in executive sessions. Brenton, Mary Lou, Katie can all go, and Eric can go, Chris, Steve, and Jeff can stay. And can you log off everyone at home, other than Ashad?
Yeah.
And then bring up the agenda.
It is my,
Feel free to go to the table, everyone.
my duty to, as we are discussing executive session tonight to discuss confidential trade secrets and commercially valuable confidential proprietary information not subject to inspection